Your attention, masters, mistresses. All systems functional for the Everything Geek podcast.
Hey, my name's Rich McDonald, and I played David Mason in Call of Duty Black Ops 2, and you're listening to Everything Geek podcast.
Hey everybody, you're listening to Everything Geek podcast. Thanks for listening.
Hey, it's Leif Gaffert. I played Uncle Ben's killer in The Amazing Spider-Man, and you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast.
Hello, I'm Simon Fisherbecker. You probably know me better as Dorian Moldovar from Doctor Who, or the Fat Friar from Harry Potter. And this is Everything Geek podcast.
Face it, Tiger. You just hit the jackpot with the Everything Geek podcast.
You're listening to the Everything Geek podcast, bringing you interviews from your favorite films and TV shows every week, and all of the latest news. Here's your host, Ruari Williamson.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast. I'm your host Ruari, and joining me today is a very special guest. We have Lennie James, the creator, writer and star of Save Me as Nelly. He also stars as Morgan Jones in The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead, and his other notable roles include Mr. Cotton in Blade Runner 2049, Robert Hawkins in Jericho, Saul in Snatch, Glen Boyle in Critical, Joe Geddes in The Winter Sun, and Gates in Line of Duty. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. It's slightly unnerving hearing that list of things that you've done. It's like an obituary.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
It's good to be on the show.
So getting right into my questions for you, can you tell us what inspired you to come up with the idea for your new series, Save Me?
I always wanted to get back to writing. I'd written and thought I would write a lot more when I was a younger actor, when I first came out of drama school, but I got lucky and acting became a fantastic distraction. And I had this idea that was just kind of percolating in my head. It was a kind of fantastical idea about, some kind of malevolent kind of baddie who was using young kids to breed I don't know, it was a very silly story, but one part of that story was a tale of a man who had been absent from his child's life, who was brought back into his child's life because something unfortunate happened to them. And then I received a telephone call from my agent saying that Sky and Mentor, who was head of drama, had phoned up to ask whether or not I had an idea that I'd like to pitch to Sky for a returning television series. And this small part of the fantastical story just popped into my head and started taking on life of its own. And eventually that turned into Save Me.
How did you come up with writing the character of Nelly? Was there any inspiration behind his character?
Well, I wanted to write a thriller. I wanted to test myself as a writer at this kind of stage of whatever career I have in that direction, and I wanted to write a thriller. But I wanted to set it in a real place, and I wanted it populated by real people. I wanted to be loyal to some of the traditions and tropes of the thriller genre, but I didn't want to be overly restricted to it, and I wanted to push out at the sides a bit. So my idea was to, stick to a lot of the rules and laws of a whodunit, and but also I wanted to set it in a real place. I didn't want to write television about television. I wanted to write television about something that I believe to be real. And when I came up with the idea of Nelly being someone who's very ill-equipped for the quest that he kind of sets out on, that he's not an ex-cop, he's not an ex-soldier, he's not somebody with a certain set of skills. He is a geezer who's more accustomed to standing at the end of the bar, and the only exercise he gets is lifting the pint from the bar to his mouth. I wanted that guy to be spurred into going on this quest to try and find his daughter who's been taken from him. I also wanted to write, as is my wont, I wanted to write a story of redemption, but I wanted to write about the real cost of that you might think you've got a righteous reason to be doing all the things that you're doing, but it still has an effect on you that you might be aware of or not aware of, but also on the people closest to you and the people of your community. And I wanted to write about that, whatever good Nelly thought he was doing, the way he goes about it because of the man that he is, isn't necessarily the most productive or the most unharmful for the people around him.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you yourself have 3 daughters as well, and the story of Save Me is about Nelly being arrested and accused of abducting his daughter that he barely knew. Would you say that because you have daughters yourself, that this project is one that you've done that means the most to you?
I don't, as it happens. I mean, I think the child that's missing is a daughter rather than a son, because I have daughters, maybe. But somebody else asked me this question, and I didn't realise that this was my answer until I found myself answering it. My story is about a man who doesn't know what it is to be a father, who doesn't know what it is to be the father of a daughter, who doesn't actually know this child that he's trying to get back. I do. I along with my wife, obviously, I've raised my kids. I've been very active and still am active in their lives. I've been there. I believe, I'll say, they'll probably disagree with me because that's what kids do, for all of the important moments of their lives. Nelly hasn't. Nelly's met Jodie once when she was 3 years old, and that was to sign adoption papers so that her stepfather could adopt her. So he doesn't know this child. He doesn't know what it is to be a father. And actually part of the journey that Nelly goes on, part of the twist in this thriller, part of the journey to redemption that Nelly's going to go on, is that he will learn what it means to be a father. But he will learn that in his quest to find a child that he may never meet. And that is part of the suspense of, and the tragedy to a certain extent of this story, is that the lessons Nelly may learn about himself will be learned off of the back of something terrible that's happened to his child.
Absolutely. What would you say was the highlight of working on Save Me for you?
There's a moment, and it's not the only one, there's lots of kind of highlights, but there's a moment when you walk onto a set on the first day and it's something that you've written, and there's a moment when it hits you that all of the trucks and everybody working there and all of the lights and all of the scouting and all of the producing and all of the designing and all of the decisions that's been made. There's about, 100, 120 people, and they're all there hopefully bringing their A game to this job because of something you did, something you wrote down, some notion, idea that you had, and now it's real. And that's a moment you have to navigate, whether you kind of want to or not, but it arrives and it hits you and it introduces itself and it makes itself real. And that's a big moment. There are a number of times on set. There's one time I remember very clearly when we were filming in the pub, which is one of our kind of main locations, and it's not a particularly easy place to film in because it's a real working pub. The windows and the design of it is not necessarily conducive to having a film unit in it. But there was a moment in between filming when we were moving setups, and everybody was just having just a lovely time. Everybody was it just seemed to me everybody was enjoying the job that they were doing, and they were enjoying the people that were sharing that experience with them. And I just found myself standing in the corner, just watching people going about enjoying doing their jobs, and it was just lovely. It was a very nice moment. It was a moment that could only have been in that situation at that moment, and I'm not even sure anybody else noticed it, but it was a moment that I certainly noticed, and it was something I took some pride in and enjoyed, and felt like, oh, that's a good thing. I mean, whatever this turns out to be, however, whether people like it or don't like it, whatever it kind of turns out to be, we had that moment, and it was lovely, and to whatever degree. I mean, it's not curing cancer or anything, but it was a good way to do the job the way that we were doing it.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the really great thing about working behind the scenes as the creator for this series. Like, you get to take even more pride in it, seeing it come to life, gradually over time. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you do that. You do have a certain level of investment and a certain level of responsibility that you might not necessarily have on other projects. But also, it was just, one of the things I really enjoyed was the work people did. Like even after the bulk of my involvement was done, after after it had been written, after it had been shot, and then it goes into the editor, and Oral, our editor, just did a fantastic job. I mean, so much of Save Me is Oral's first assembly of it. He's done a masterful job, and they come on they're there in the background while you're filming, just kind of doing kind of rough assemblies and stuff. But when it got down to the bit where that is up to him, and the bit where he brings his skills and his talent, yet again, along with Paul Schwartz, who was our sound guy, and this was not an easy gig to record, because I wrote it in a way that I believe people speak, where they're halfway through thoughts before they shoot onto another thought, and people are talking over the top of each other. And a lot of times in those situations, your sound person will go, everybody record it separately, and we'll just lay them over the top at a later date. But that didn't really work for me, and I've done that before. But so Paul set it up and allowed people to talk over each other, and that made a huge difference to the way that this story's told. And Chaz Bain, who's our DOP who shot it, and again, like I was saying, in one of our main locations, the pub, it's not an easy location to shoot in, but again, Chaz brought his A game and makes it look beautiful. I mean, Save Me looks beautiful. It's a real celebration of a part of London that is more often than not lamented and felt sorry for. This makes it look lovely, and I mean, not unrealistically lovely, just highlights that there is beauty there, and adds to the other thing I was trying to do, which was to celebrate this part of London.
Definitely. Now, I should say this for our listeners, but we are going to discuss The Walking Dead spoilers, so if you're not caught up, this is your spoiler warning. I just know no one would forgive me if I didn't put a spoiler warning in here, so there we go. Yeah,
no, it's very weird now that you have to do that. I have to do that kind of not just when I'm doing interviews about the show, but also just sometimes when I'm talking to friends or family. I'll just be, talking about something and go, oh, by the way, spoiler alert, what I'm about to say, are you in the slightest bit interested? Because the number of times I've said something and then I've heard someone scream at me because they've gone, no, don't tell me that. I'm not in that, I haven't caught up or something. I now have to do it as habit, so which is a bit odd.
Yeah, it is. But anyway, so the latest episode of The Walking Dead Honor saw a major character get killed off in Carl Grimes. What was it like saying goodbye to Carl's actor Chandler Riggs?
It's one of the things that Scott Gimple says is, even though we are creating this, telling this story of this kind of mythical kind of zombie apocalypse, when we lose an actor, a character, it has real world consequences for us because that person is no longer around. And, there are different degrees depending on how long and how involved characters have been in this, but there isn't anybody who's gone who has been in it as long and has been more vital to the story that's kind of been told than Chandler. He was 8 when I first met him, 7, 8 when I first met him when we were shooting the first ever episode. And he was a little kid, and none of us knew the journey that we were about to go on. None of us knew how the show was going to impact or be accepted in the world and the life that it was going to have. And he spent more time playing Carl now in his life than he had not playing Carl, because he's now 18, so we've been at it for 10 years, and it's a major loss. I mean, there's no other way of putting it in our day to day. All episodes, pretty much all the episodes after episode 9 that has just gone on, Chandler's not there. I mean, he's popped in a couple of times, but he just wasn't there, and we really did feel his absence, and it was something that we all kind of had to come to terms with. It wasn't something that could be ignored, or it wasn't something that could go unnoticed, and it wasn't something that could go undealt with. So it was a big moment and a big turning point, not just in the story of this show, but in the making of this show. It affected both our cast and our crew, and it was massive.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Your character, Morgan, will also be the first to cross over from The Walking Dead to the spin-off series Fear the Walking Dead. How did you find out about the plan to put your character on Fear, and what has it been like working with that cast?
I got a telephone call from Scott saying we'd had a meeting a couple of days before, the normal meeting that you have at the start of the season. So, then I got a telephone call a couple of days later at the start of shooting season 8, and he said, "I forgot to talk to you about something. Do you mind coming up to my house and having a chat?" And I said, "Sure." And I went up there, and he just said, he explained to me about the slight repositioning that was happening in both The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead, where Angela was going to be the more hands-on, on location, on set showrunner, and that Andrew and Ian were coming in to be the new showrunners of Fear, and that he was kind of stepping back to be the kind of exec producer, overseer of both shows. And then he said, and how would you like to move from Walking Dead to Fear the Walking Dead, and give us a chance to explore Morgan's character in a kind of different realm. And in all honesty, I was absolutely speechless. It was the last thing I expected. It came completely out of the blue. And when Scott asked me, he was talking for a good while after that, but I don't think I was listening to anything. There was just a ringing going on in my head. And he asked me, did I have any questions? And I said, no, I don't. I probably will the minute I get in my car to drive back to my flat. But at this particular moment in time, I've got nothing but, oh my gods, ringing around in my head. And not least, what it would mean about my continued involvement in The Walking Dead. I wasn't at that point kind of contemplating moving or leaving or doing any of those things. Although, I'm not, as we were just talking with Chandler, I'm not. I was never of a mind of thinking, I would be in The Walking Dead forever. But it just took me completely by surprise, and I needed to go and spend some time figuring out exactly how I felt about it, and whether or not it was something I wanted to do, or whether it was the way I wanted to continue playing Morgan, or whether or not it was a good thing to do to Morgan, a character that I'm very protective of. And it took a few months to kind of figure out whether or not it was absolutely the right choice to me. There was a lot of conversations with a lot of people close and important to me, and ultimately I trust Scott very much. I trust the commitment he has to Morgan as a character, because he's shown it over and over again, and it was a unique experience. I can't think of another character that has been offered this the opportunity that I've been offered, to have established itself on one show and then move to an already existing show. I mean, it's not like I have led the spin-off. The spin-off had already happened. It was three seasons in, and I come in and join in season 4. I can't think of another actor or character who's been offered that opportunity. And although it's kind of early days yet, and we're still kind of finding our feet, because Fear has it's not just about my crossover. It's also moved location, and like I said, has new showrunners and writers. So there's a few changes afoot, but at the moment, really enjoying it, and having a fantastic time, and the existing and still present members of cast and crew from the first 3 seasons of Fear have been nothing but welcoming and generous.
That's really great. That's all of my questions for you today, Lennie. It's been a pleasure talking to you on the podcast.
You too. This says more about me than it says about anything else. It's just that I can't really read as well as I think I can. When I first saw the name of your podcast, I thought it was All Things Greek. Which
I've heard worse.
would have been a very, very different podcast. But I've had a lot of fun. It's been really good talking to you.
Yeah, and hopefully we can talk again sometime.
I hope so.
Yeah. So look forward to talking to you again soon, and take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
All episodes of Save Me are available from today, February 28th, on Sky Atlantic and Now TV. The Walking Dead airs Sundays, 9/8 Central, with the next episode being titled The Lost and the Plunderers, and Fear the Walking Dead's 4th season will premiere on April 15th. Make sure to check out our podcast links, check out our website.everythinggeekpodcast.com/EGP, check out our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekpodcast, check out our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/user/everythinggeekcast, check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/everythinggeekp, check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/official-everythinggeekpodcast, check out our Mixcloud profile, www.mixcloud.com/everythinggeekpodcast, email us at the following email, everythinggeekpodcast@gmail.com, check out our companion podcast Everything Geek Comiccast, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekcomiccast. Make sure to check out the host's YouTube channels. Mine is www.youtube.com/user/separatist-destroyers. Check out Lennie James's full list of credits on IMDb, www.imdb.com/name/nm0416694. and check out channel 1138 where we broadcast live from www.channel1138.com. Geeks out, everyone.
But basically, I hitchhiked from Georgia to California when I was 19 years old. I got drunk and ended up in an acting class. I shouldn't say that, but it's true.
To go in every day and to shake hands and get kisses and hugs, and I think that is like the most special thing about working on a project, because you get to meet new people, and some will become your